Nottingham way to play albatross.
Back with the Rock City bodies. These have been painted, obviously. This is now going to be rubbed back with a 600, probably a 400 grit wet and dry, 400 grit dry, and then 600 grit wet and dry, just flattened off, and then it'll be given several clear coats of lacquer and one coat of amber lacquer, which acts as an aging coat, makes it look quite used. And the beauty of it is, you know, you could cover all of this top with amber lacquer, and then you can rub it away in the areas where you want to imitate wear. Works quite well, but probably won't show up very well on camera. I use this sandpaper. It's foam backed, really nice to use. It's called Rhino Soft with a Y. Comes in different grits. You can buy it in big packs. I get it from car finishing suppliers. But quite simply, just go over quite lightly, flattening off your lovely glossy paint finish. Doesn't matter about any particular direction. You do have to be careful on the corners because it's easy to sand through down to the bare wood. And this reveals any high and low spots as well. It's at this point when you discover spiders and green fly and stuff stuck in that you can rub them out, touch up if need be. You can't touch up stain. 600 wet and dry, used wet. Clean water with a little bit of washing up liquid. You could probably, with a little bit more work with the wet and dry on this body, you could probably rub it up 600 or 800 and put it on the buffing machine and get a good polish on it without adding any lacquer coats. But I prefer to put clear coat on top. Time to start assembly. All the bits and pieces are kind of ready. Bodies need a final rub down and polish. There's quite a bit of work to do on the metal plates and on the pickup rings. They're in the raw state right now. They need a lot of sanding and polishing. Machine heads have been aged. One guitar's having cream tea, bangers and mash humbuckers in raw nickel. They will look really good. And the other one is a set of Sunbears P90 and a Sunbird, which we've fitted before. There's the finished ring mounted in the mini humbucker with a raw ring to the side of it. It's polished up from an 80 grit up to about 800 and then buffed on the machine. That's the raw sand cast ring.
I was blown away by our Soviet comrades. What an extensive history of your talent and drawings. I have nothing to hide.
Can be fungus, and the ant becomes fascinated by heights in what's called summit disease. This is a syndrome in which the ant puts the ant to bite onto the underside of a leaf in the death grip. The height is just the right height, giving the temperature and humidity for the fungus to produce its spores. So these fungi are able to puppet these ants' behavior with
Use two types of cutters. These are both by Summit, very good. That's the frets clipped to length. Filing next, it takes ages. Longer you spend on it, the better the job. I suppose it's obvious. I use diamond files. These are from Chris Allsop. I've had them years and they don't seem to wear out. So we'll see a separate video in a second. Flatten them off and then you put your chamfer on. Traditionally it's 35 degrees, which is what this block will do, 35 degrees or square. There's also another one which I think is 15 degrees, so that actually increases your effective fret length, which is quite a good thing, although people don't seem to appreciate it, and the tradition is 35 degrees, so that's generally what I do. The 15 degree one can work very well when you've fretted over binding, and it does make a difference to the playable area or playable length. So yeah, it'll be a good half hour, 40 minutes tidying it all up now, and then it needs levelling and crowning. The file surface cleans up really easily if you need to do so, and there's a coarse version and a fine version. Great bits of kit and not expensive. That's just a recommendation on Chris Allsop. There's no money changes hands. He doesn't even know me. Flatten them off first, and I sometimes, or usually, I put a slight, ever so slight bevel on, tending towards the 35 degrees. It's easier with the flat file because you can put a lot of vertical pressure on, whereas with the beveled files, it's relying on you pushing in from the side. That's an unfiled edge. Difficult to get it in focus. And there's a filed edge. So that is roughly square with a slight chamfer and slightly rolling on the fingerboard. Forgive the camera shake. Beveled file now. That goes on for ages, then each fret end will be chamfered off and rounded individually. Wiring time, 300k CTS logarithmic pots. Sometimes I put a linear pot on the tone control. Switchcraft toggle switch and jack. Treble bleed on volume, on both volumes, and that's the tone capacitor. Switchcraft output jack, always great quality. And when you wire it in, make sure you twist the cables as served. I like to use a solid 20 SWG wire for a lot of the ground connections. You can see it running there from the toggle switch to that volume pot, connected on the side, which is a bit neater. I've left it overlong for the time being because it's fairly stiff, as you can see, and is a great sort of additional use as a cable tie if you need be, and you'll see what I mean when the job's finished. I'm also using pushback cloth covered wire. I just find it easier to use. I think it looks better, not that it should ever really be seen. Just a bit more forgiving, I guess, than using plastic covered stuff, although I do use the plastic insulated wire. That's the plate wired as much as I can without putting it on the guitar. You can see the loose end of solid wire, which I'm using as a ground, has been used to strap up the loose wires running from the switch, and that's like the bus bar type of connection. So the capacitor and the ground to the output jack have been soldered to this solid wire between the pots. Saves messing up the back of your pots, and it's dead easy in the future. If you want to do any alterations, you can unhook them so easily without any mess. I've now got to connect both pickups and the ground wire from the bridge. Sometimes you can, or occasionally I will use that overlong ground wire and substitute that for the separate bus bar that I've been using, so the whole thing will form one solid ground circuit, but it's a bit messier doing it that way, and it's harder to remove the control plate afterwards when everything's tied in so tightly. If you end up with a raggy end on your pushback wire, just burn it off. Burn it off with a cigarette lighter. Carefully. This is where using the solid ground wire is really useful. I'm using it to hold down the braided pickup lead just here, tight to the pot, and I will solder the braid to the solid ground wire rather than putting lashings of solder on the back of the pot. So again, if that pickup is to be removed, it's quite easy to desolder that solid wire and the whole thing will come loose. So that's the neck pickup connected with lots of heat shrink tubing all the way back to where it leaves the cavity. The braided cable on pickups, and using braided cable generally, is really good stuff, but you've got to make sure it's well insulated because you don't know what's going to go on once you've put the control plate back down. And if it moves, it'll cause you a short circuit. That's everything done, ready to be fitted. You can easily test it at this stage by plugging into an amp and tapping the pickups with a screwdriver. All tested out and the plate fitted. I've just fitted the knobs and switch tip. I always like that point. It kind of feels like the guitar's nearly finished. These are the Aramis knobs, fantastic. Just had a new delivery, slightly different shape on these. And his new switch tip, which is great. This is a non-Rock City version. Be ready soon. Back with Rock City, we're almost good to go. Just drop the string ferrule block in with a couple of drops of glue. Time to string up and cut the nut. Or cut the nut and string up, depending which way around you like to do it. Pleased with the way the hardware's worked out. The Aramis knobs and switch tip look great, and the Sunbear pickups sit really well with that choice of hardware, I think. I prefer to fit the nut and then cut and file it on the guitar while the guitar's strung up. There's various ways of doing it. However, you need to make sure that your neck is perfectly straight while it's under string tension. Because if you don't, if you cut the nut to give you clearance at the first fret and there's any kind of relief in the neck, further down the line, if somebody wants to straighten that neck, because that's the way they prefer it or it needs to be straightened, the strings will catch at the first fret. So at some point you need to have your guitar under tension, tuned to concert pitch, to check your nut clearance at the first fret. It's just a question of slackening the strings off and moving them out of the way. You can use these straps under the neck, keeps all of the strings clear of where you're working, and just make sure you're careful with the files and don't catch anything that you don't want to catch. I use Nomad Diamond files. I've been through loads of different types of nut file. These are by far the best. My only criticism, if it is a criticism, is they're too good, and it's so easy to be over enthusiastic, shall we say, and a single stroke, you've cut the slot too deep, but you soon get used to them. All done. The very last job, or at least the job I leave to last, is fitting the string tree. I always get, obviously I'm not going to fit it there, I always get really apprehensive about this, because I just think, what if I put it in the wrong place? What if I drill straight through the headstock? What if it's just not right? Because it's the last job, I guess. All done. One NCG Mule with a Rock City top. I'll leave that for about a week, as it's now under string tension, and then I'll tweak the setup, but it's all looking okay so far.
Watched them both doing it. I thought, of course.
Yeah. That. Well, do you know what? I'm glad you've said that then, because I'll go back and reassess. Because when I was trying to learn how to play, fuck it's that one that goes, when she feels like crying, that one. And that's one of them ones where you can do it so far on your own, but you need the other person there to get the, all the twiddly bits involved. And even something like Albatross, it's just like, how the fuck do you come up with something like that? With an A, it's like, what? What is it?
big as it could be the bass line.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, the bass guitarist doing that.
Yeah, because it's like I feel I need to have that.
Yeah.
Even though you don't need it, and then that. Because when you do the dun and dun and dun, I think it's got to go to A. That bo blue blue. That's the Nottingham way to play albatross.